Hello, hello, hello. The mask is back, and we have a underwhelming UFC International Fight Week main event, or main card, I should say. The rest of the card's pretty good. I like the prelims, but the main card could have been better. We could have had, instead of Felipe Lima, Payton Talbot, we could have had like a Robert Whittaker, Rainier de Ritter. I know that that's a fight night now, but it could have been, it could have been on this card. But I think the prelims are pretty good, honestly. And yeah, let's just jump into it. Let's start predicting fights. We have Janota Denise and Alvin Hines. Pretty underwhelming card, main card especially, but I think that like I said, the prelims are pretty exciting. Now, maybe not the most well recognized names, but I think that they're very exciting clashes. And first of all, we have Janota Denise and Alvin Hines. I'm going to go with Janota Denise based on the fact that I still think that he is a really good kickboxer in the heavyweight division. And I think that he is going to take that Marcin Tybura matchup, that loss that he had, and use it as a learning experience because what I've seen from him is a patience, and I haven't seen that in the Marcin Tybura fight. So what that showed to me is he was impatient in that fight, and I believe that that was a short notice fight as well for him because I believe that he was originally supposed to fight Derek Lewis and it got switched to Marcin Tybura. So I think that's going to be a learning experience for him to not rush the KOs when you wobble him a little bit. Because I think he wobbled him and then he kind of just rushed for the KO with these big winging hooks and overhands, and so he kind of just let Marcin Tybura find a takedown and find success there. So yeah, I think that Janata Diniz has a lot more experience in the UFC. He has shown uh, better kicking ability, better punches, and even though I haven't seen Alvin Hines, I haven't watched any of his fights, I'm just going to assume that he's more well rounded than Alvin Hines and that I like the 7-0 from Alvin Hines, but I'm just going to assume that he's more well equipped with 3 or 4 UFC fights in his career already, while this is Alvin Hines' first. I think Alvin Hines could be a decent prospect in the heavyweight division, but he's 74 inches of reach in the heavyweight division, and that is quite abysmal if we're being honest. So I'm going to say probably second round just to be safe. And then Nico Price versus Jacoby Smith. I'm going to go with the first round KO. I never thought that Nico Price had a very good chin, and unfortunately for him, he's going up against a guy who seemingly has a lot of KOs on his career, and he even has some decent wrestling from what I've heard. And on top of that, I mean, Nico Price, the reason why he hasn't been getting KO'd too much recently is because he's been fighting guys who don't really have much power. The last guy that he fought that had a little bit of power was Robbie Lawler, and you saw how that went. It finished in less than a minute, I believe. So yeah, and he has been KO'd even before that. If my memory serves me well, I know that he's been KO'd before that. So you're looking at 16-8 versus 10-0, and I actually root for Nico Price. I saw his in the UFC Embedded or Countdown, whatever it's called. I think it was Embedded. Yeah, he had like a nice family. He's a Christian, and I root for him here. But Jacoby Smith, he's going to be a very good prospect if he wins. So it's better for the sport if Jacoby Smith wins. Only thing here is Jacoby Smith is going to have a 4-inch reach disadvantage, and so that could be a little bit of a problem initially if Nico Price uses his reach to his advantage here. So yeah, I'm gonna say it's probably gonna be like a somewhat late first round KO, maybe in the third minute of the fight, maybe 3 minutes 37 seconds in. I don't know, something random like that. He just gets hit with a big shot he didn't see coming out of nowhere. And then Terrence McKinney versus Vyacheslav Borshev. Now, this is a very interesting one. I think that Terrence McKinney has a very, very good path to victory here because Vyacheslav Borshev, I've seen in numerous fights that he does not fare well with these longer, more explosive guys who have uh, straight punches. Because we've seen in other a lot of other fights of Vyacheslav's career, especially in a few moments against like Tom Nolan, even one moment against Chris Duncan on the Contender Series. Nazim Sadikov doesn't really throw that many straight punches, so it wasn't really that much of a problem for him in that fight um, against Nazim Sadikov. But in other fights, we've seen him not fare well with the straight shots down the pipe. If you throw a jab, it's not going to be good. And the thing about Terrence McKinney is, we've seen, I mean, even with the what's his name, Matt Frivola fight, great example. KOs him in like the first 11 seconds of the fight. Boom, 1-2 down the pipe. It's over. So we know that Terrence McKinney likes to throw straight shots often. And Vyacheslav Borshev, that's his weakness, I feel. The only thing here is Vyacheslav Borshev, in every other element of the striking, is better than Terrence McKinney. And Terrence McKinney does have the grappling that he could go to, considering that he is a bigger lightweight. Vyacheslav Borshev is 5'11", but he's not that dense, and he's never fared that well on the grappling side of things. However, he has fought people that are better than Terrence McKinney on the ground. Therefore, we should expect him to probably do a little better in the grappling here. Although Terrence McKinney is explosive, like I said, he's not a Nazim Sadikov, he's not a Chase Hooper. And so this is a really tricky one to pick, but I'm actually going to go with the underdog Vyacheslav Borshev. I could actually regret this, but I'm going to say a first round KO. I think he's going to maybe use some head movement, use some slick head movement. Seeing that they're about the same height, he's going to have an easier time getting inside as opposed to versus Tom Nolan, who is like 6'3". And I think that he's going to slip some of the jabs, slip some of the 1-2s, and he's going to come in with some body shots and then upstairs with like a right hook. And then it's going to just sleep Terrence McKinney with his awkward defense. So I'm going to say first round KO, but it's going to be really risky because I could see Vyacheslav totally getting KO'd here as well. And then Tracy Cortez versus Viviana Araujo. I'm actually going to go with Tracy Cortez here. Wow, big shock. And wow, another big shock. I'm going with decision here. Yeah, both of these are decision merchants. They both haven't really gotten much KOs in their career, if at all. I think Tracy Cortez has gotten one finish, and Vivian has gotten like a couple. But yeah, I think that Tracy Cortez is the much better pocket boxer, and Vivian Araujo is just a marauder at this point in her career. Like, her win against what was it, Karine Silva? Yeah, that was not a good performance, honestly. She was losing the first round and the second round, like up until the second half of the second round, where Karine Silva was just gassing off of constantly shooting and just constantly throwing these wild winging hooks that because she was more big and more athletic up until then, it worked because she was constantly throwing those big shots and there was not really much that Viviana Araujo could do to avoid it. So she was just kind of having to deal with it until Karine Silva gassed. And so we have Tracy Cortez, who hasn't really shown much fatigue in her career. She took a short notice fight against Rose Namajunas. That's going to be a learning experience, I feel. And yes, height and reach is a disadvantage. I mean, no, not height and reach, but reach is a disadvantage for Tracy Cortez. But she always manages to find her way into the pocket to get those decent combinations off. I mean, we're looking at Jasmine Jusidovicius in her record as a win, 230-27 and a 29-28, I believe, and look at Jasmine Jusidovicius now. She has decent boxing at herself, and she has really good grappling. And so I think that the fact that Tracy Cortez was able to nullify any takedown attempts from Jasmine Jusidovicius and just outpoint her in the boxing, I think this is going to be a pretty clear-cut 30-27 or 29-28 if it goes to like a maybe first round. Viviana Araujo gets really quick pace in the first round, but then she begins to slow down in the second and the third a bit, or maybe she actually starts slow, but she gets her pace or gets her footing in the third round. I could see it like a 29-28 as well. Either way, it's going to be a clear-cut unanimous decision for Viviana Rujo. I mean, what? No, Tracy Cortez. No, not Vivian. But Hydra Emil and Jose Delgado. I'm going to go with Jose Delgado here. I'm going to pick probably a first round KO. The reason why I'm going with the first round KO here is because Jose Delgado is a more technical guy, even though he's also kind of a brawler at moments. He doesn't just swing hooks at the hips, it feels like. Now, Hydra Emil's fun, and he doesn't always just do that, but from what I've seen in his career, there's been many times where I'm like, okay, yeah, if that guy had power, he's going to KO him, especially against his last opponent. What was it? William Gomes. I forget his name sometimes, but William Gomes was hitting him clean with a lot of shots, and unfortunately for him, because he didn't have a lot of power and he didn't have a lot of room to work because it was an Apex fight where the cage is a little smaller, he didn't really have the opportunities to actually hurt Hyder Emil in that fight. But there were a lot of moments where he was landing clean, and it was a split decision, and I thought that it actually went to William Gomes. And so if we have a guy who's pretty technical, maybe not as technical as William Gomes, but a technical guy in his own right who honestly has better hooks, better combinations. He's just not as ruthless, and he maybe doesn't have as good of a chin. If he just connects clean with like a good overhand or a good uppercut or a good hook, one of those, as Hyder Emil is coming forward, I think he's going to get it. One thing I'm surprised with is the amount of people picking decision here. I think it certainly could go decision, but it shouldn't be the majority opinion, because both of these guys go for KOs, they go for scraps. It's going to be an insane fight, but I don't think it's going to last that long. So I'm going to say Delgado's just going to be the more technical fighter in there. And then we have Jack Hermanson versus Gregory Rodriguez. Robocop. Gregory Rodriguez, he's much better than Joe Pyfer, in my opinion, offensively at least. I think that he's much faster. If you look at the actual both their most recent fights, Gregory Rodriguez was able to drop his opponents, and Joe Pyfer was more so able to just land single shots. And Gregory Rodriguez, when he would drop him, because Joe Pyfer also dropped his last opponent, but Gregory Rodriguez, on the other hand, he would actually try to follow up. He would actually go to the ground, while Joe Pyfer was like trying to do his best Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez impression here against what's his name, Kelvin Gastelum, and he was throwing like the same shots. I'm really surprised that some people were actually impressed with Joe Pyfer's performance there. He was literally just throwing single shots. He was throwing like 1-2s. He was throwing one overhand. He was throwing a jab and an overhand, and it was really just like sometimes he would mix it up a bit, but it was the same guy that we saw against Jack Hermanson, which is, it's proving my opinions on this fight here, because Gregory Rodriguez, he was much more devastating against a guy like Jared Cannonier, who was very devastating against Jack Hermanson. You're looking at these guys like a Gregory Rodriguez, like a Jared Cannonier, who actually are devastating power punchers, who can mix it up, who can go to different shots, not just a one overhand, not just a jab overhand, they're way more. I feel they're way more technical than a Joe Pyfer, at least offensively. Now, defensively, it might be different because maybe Joe Pyfer has a better distance management than those two. But my point still stands here. I think that once they get going, once a Jared Cannonier or a Robocop get going, it's hard for you to regain that momentum unless they themselves gas. And Gregory Rodriguez gassed in the third and the fourth against a Jared Cannonier, because Gregory Rodriguez was he was just like unloading the tank. He dropped Jared Cannonier twice. He won the first and the second rounds, and he just kept pouring it on in the first and second rounds. So he just wasn't managing his cardio that much, because he thought that he would get Cannonier out of there, because I saw that Jared Cannonier was getting wobbled all over the place against Nasruddin Imavov, and he got dropped in the last round, which looked like a delayed KO against Caio Borralho. So I'm just going to get him out of here real quick in the first or second round, like a Gilbert Burns versus Michael Morales. But it's not that simple. And so he realized that the hard way. But what we have here is a more devastating in the first and second rounds, and more fast twitch and lethal and longer range and longer height than Jared Cannonier version of Jared Cannonier in Gregory Rodriguez versus Jack Hermanson, who hasn't dealt well with that sort of style. If you look back in his career, you'll probably lots of people forgot, but he actually fought Jared Cannonier, and you'll probably forget what happened. But oh, would you look at that? If you actually go back, he got KO'd, and it was vicious, and it was like a first round, like brutal TKO. And overall, I think that tells me what I need to know here, especially since Jack Hermanson is coming off of a layoff. He's going to be smaller in there. He's not going to be able to use his reach to his advantage that much against a guy who almost has the exact same attributes, who's taller, who has 2 inches less reach, yes, but he uses his reach pretty well. Gregory Rodriguez, he goes forward with like these really good straight punches, and then when he comes in close with the pocket boxing, he definitely likes to mix it up with the hooks. He goes to the body. Sometimes he'll jab to the body to set up upstairs. Like Gregory Rodriguez, I feel has a lot more tools than a Joe Pyfer. So I'm gonna say probably a I'm gonna say a late first round KO. I'm surprised that actually on Tapology not many people are picking Hermanson. But I'm gonna say a late first round KO. Actually, am I gonna go with first round? It could be second round, but I don't know. I'm gonna go with first round, I guess. And then Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Um, Felipe Lima, I'm gonna go with probably. Am I gonna go with decision or submission here? Oh man, this is tough. I think the thing is, Peyton Talbot's definitely gonna win on the feet. I think that Jungle Boy Felipe Lima, he has okay striking, but honestly, it's overrated. We're looking at Miles Johns here, who isn't a decent puncher. Like, he has some decent hooks, he has some decent setups to the overhands, but he doesn't really do too much else. And Felipe Lima was getting caught in moments in that fight, so I could definitely see Payne Talbot KOing Felipe Lima, to be honest, with these straight shots down the pipe, and he could improve because he's actually younger, and Payne Talbot is actually really good on the feet, but he's terrible on the ground, so I could honestly see a submission here. Oh man. I'm still like debating if I go with first round KO for Gregory Rodriguez. I could totally see that going to decision 29-28 or a second round KO. I'm gonna stick with first round, I guess, KO. And then yeah, I mean with Felipe Lima, he like I said, he has I guess decent boxing enough to get in on the shots and keep the back, because one thing that we know about Peyton Talbot is his grappling, his jiu-jitsu especially, is not that good. I mean, he was about to get he got his back taken like numerous times against Raoni Barcelos. He was getting ground and pounded. He was about to get finished in the end of the third round. So I'm actually going to say a 29-28 decision for Felipe Lima, because I think that Peyton Talbot is going to secure the first or the third round based off of the fact that Felipe Lima can't score the takedown in one of those rounds, just because of maybe fatigue in the third round or in the first round. Peyton Talbot actually is fresh, and so it's going to be hard for Felipe Lima to really get a good grip on Peyton Talbot or get a good setup with like an overhand or like a hook. It's going to be hard for him to get a takedown early, maybe. So yeah, but overall, I think that if he gets the takedown, he can probably get the back and secure it for most of the first round or the second or the third. Basically, I think he's going to go to the grappling a lot, and he's smart, and he's well-rounded, and he's going to go to the shots, whereas Peyton Talbot just has the striking to go to. And it's really good and lethal, but he does not know. It's like a fish out of water in the grappling. He does not know what to do there. So I'm going to say decision. I was debating submission, though. And then we're going to go with another decision for Beneil Dariush. I think that this is a really good underdog here. I think that Beneil Dariush, I wish that he was a bigger underdog, because I knew it was going to close to an evens fight. I knew it was going to close to an evens, but he's still an ever so slight underdog, and I like the underdog still, because yes, Beneil Dariush has sloppier striking defense. Yes, he only throws really overhands and a few jabs and mostly body kicks. Yes, I know. He mostly throws overhands and body kicks and sometimes a few jabs. I get it. And wild winging hooks at times. But, and I understand that Renato Moicano has a better jab. I know that. But what we're talking about here is a guy who goes to the grappling if his striking does not work out in Renato Moicano, who goes with a jab and does not have any other really significant means to hurt you on the feet. We're talking about a guy who was losing the second round against Benoit Saint Denis, who he 10-8'd in the first round, who he bloodied up, bruised badly. Yes, we're talking about that guy who jabs people, and that's about it, and he has no actual lethal means to hurt you in Renato Moicano. Beneil Dariush, the problem that he had in his career was that he was constantly fighting these guys who can hurt you, who are explosive, who are athletic, who are very technical on the feet. Renato Moicano is decent on the feet. He has a good jab. But aside from the jab, he kind of just has leg kicks, and sometimes he goes upstairs with the kicks. He doesn't have that much else. And I feel Beneil Dariush has much better body kicks. He has much more lethal punches when he throws. Yes, Beneil doesn't have that much athleticism. He doesn't have that much power, and that's the problem here. He's not going to be able to hurt Renato Moicano unless he hurts him with like a big loading up overhand like he did against Mateusz Gamrot in the third round. And Mateusz Gamrot is like the perfect opponent for him going into this. I understand that that wasn't recent. That wasn't a recent win, but I mean it's the perfect opponent for me to be secure in my pick in Beneil Dariush because if you look at that, if you look at Mateusz Gamrot now, he likes to go to the jab a lot, like Renato Moicano. He goes to the takedowns, but when he went against Beneil Dariush, he knew that he was getting out scrambled there, and he still went for it because he knew that that was his only realm of success there. He knew that his jab wasn't enough, and Renato Moicano might have a little bit of a better jab, but Mateusz Gamrot has a really similar game to Renato Moicano. Mateusz and Renato like to go to the jab. Sometimes they go for some decent kicks, but overall, it's mostly the jab, and then sometimes they like to go with a 1-2. And overall, the takedowns are nullified against such a good BJJ guy. And just wrestling, BJJ, grappling in general. Beneil Dariush has him beat, I think. And so we're looking at a guy in Renato Moicano who stuck with a jab on the feet because he's not going to be able to secure any takedowns. I truly believe he won't be able to secure any advantageous positions here. And so I think that Beneil Dariush is not going to respect the power coming back. And I think that he's going to be able to, especially with this long layoff, not having been rocked or dropped in recent memory, with how long it's been, I think that he's going to be able to just throw recklessly with those big, long combinations of like he did against Drakkar Close. He's going to be able to just throw overhands and hooks wildly if he needs to, and then finish the combination with a body kick that lands clean and flush. I think he's going to be able to get a little wild here. And I understand that that wildness could get him caught, but I don't think he's under threat of getting KO'd here. Maybe dropped with like a 1-2 from Renato Moicano because he got a little too reckless, but Beneil Dariush, I think, he's going to secure at least 2 of the 3 rounds off of more significant strikes on the feet, and if it gets to the ground, I think that Beneil Dariush is going to be able to roll for the leg, roll for some I don't know all the positions, what he goes for, but I know that he likes to roll for the legs, and so I think that he's going to get some decent scrambles out of these grappling exchanges and get on top or get an advantageous position if he needs to. So I'm going to say a 29-28. I think that that's a really hard fight to predict, and it's a really good fight, but I'm going with Beneil. And we have Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van. I'm going to go with Brandon Royval. I think that that's a pretty good pick here by me. I'm surprised that he's the underdog here. I understand that Joshua Van is really, really, really good, and that he does have a clear path to victory here, and that is the overhand, and he does have really fast and quick twitch reflexes. He has really good counter ability. He has really good jab as well. But Joshua Van has a huge height and reach disadvantage here, especially for flyweight, and he's coming into this 2-3 weeks short notice, while Brandon Royval had a full training camp against another explosive short guy who likes to counter you, who likes to explode inside. Now it's a different style, yes, but I mean, like what's his name, Manel Cap, he likes to explode in more. He keeps his hands lower. I understand, and he's not as technical with the boxing. I get all that, and Joshua Van, he is a little more patient. But I think that actually plays into Brandon Royval's game. The fact that Joshua Van, he likes to wait for counters more. He's a little more patient on the feet. He mostly throws single shots until he can find his counters. I think that's going to play into Brandon Royval's game. I understand that Joshua Van has good overhands, and if he just goes to that, it's pretty good here, and it's a pretty good game plan here for him against Brandon Royval. But the thing is, Brandon Royval, he has a really good jab. I know that people think that's a lazy jab, and therefore it's not good boxing. I think that's stupid, MMA, but overall, I think he has good boxing. And I think that his jab is really, really good. It's going to land on Joshua Van's face numerous occasions. And I think that Brandon Royval has a few more tools in his pocket. He has the spinning elbows, he has the knees, and those land really accurately most of the time. That's actually how he's gotten finishes most of the time against a guy like Mateus Nicolau with the knee against Kai Kara France with the spinning back elbow, and then that leaded into the guillotine. And so I don't think he's going to grapple here. He might try, and he might actually succeed in moments just because he's, I would say, arguably a better grappler than anyone Joshua Van has fought before, except maybe you could argue I guess a Bruno Silva, or maybe even a Cody Durden. But no, I overall, or even a Ray Saruya, these are great grapplers for Joshua Van to fight going into this. So I don't think he's going to grapple here. But I think Brandon Royval can, if he wants, maybe stall up against the fence or something. That's not what I'm predicting this on, though. I think that he is just overall the better rangy boxer. I think Joshua Van is a really good boxer, but he usually finds his success on these people that are much shorter, who they like to go for hooks, like a Bruno Silva, like a Cody Durden. He likes to basically go for these counters against these guys who he's able to do it against, who are a similar stocky build to him. And when he can't find those counters against these guys who are long and rangy that much, like a what's his name? Uh, uh, Charles Johnson, great example here, which was his last loss. When he can't find that many counters, when it's a kind of 50-50 tit for tat fight, he actually kind of struggles in those situations, okay? And so overall, I think that it's going to be, I'm not going to suggest a finish here. I don't think so, but I do think it's going to be pretty like I could see a drop from each side. I'm going to suggest Brandon Royval drops him in one situation, but Joshua Van comes back. I would say it's a first round, like a flying knee, or maybe not a flying knee. I don't think it was actually a flying knee that dropped Mateus Nicolau. Either way, I think it's going to be just like a step-in knee from Brandon Royval that drops Joshua Van, and he doesn't see it coming for whatever reason that might be. Maybe he's like trying to counter with an overhand but what am I saying? Up over the jab. That was some legendary stuttering. I think it's going to be an overhand. He tries to counter with a jab, or he tries to counter the jab with an overhand, and then Brandon Royval just comes in with like a sneaky step up knee, and he rocks or slightly flash drops Joshua Van, and Joshua Van comes back up because he does have really good recoverability. Joshua Van, as we've seen against a guy like Edgar Shirez, great example. And so I think that he is going to maybe Joshua Van come back in the second round, but Brandon Royval is going to come back in the third round. I'm going to say Brandon Royval wins round 1 and 3 maybe, based off of just like good jabs, good sneaky, maybe 1-2s as well, maybe some combinations around the guard if he gets Joshua Van backed up a bit, maybe some sneaky spinning back elbows, some knees, just some really sneaky experience moves from the veteran of Brandon Royval. Decision. And Alejandro Pantoja versus Kai Kara France. I'm going to go with Alejandro Pantoja. I was actually picking Kai Kara France up until the night of the fight, which is today, and I was going to pick Kai Kara France because he is the most powerful guy that Alejandro Pantoja has fought since Davison Figueiredo. The problem is he isn't as technical as a Steve Erceg in the boxing, Kai Kara France. Now, yes, he got the better of Steve Erceg because Steve Erceg backs up in linear lines, and he also doesn't have the best boxing backing up, and that's also kind of why I was picking Kai France in this fight, because Kai France has better game planning, I would say, than a Steve Ercik, for example, or just these other guys that Alejandro has fought recently. Aside from maybe a Brandon Moreno, he has better game planning. We've seen him change up his approach, Kai France, against a guy like Steve Ercik, who would wait, be patient, let Steve Ercik get a few little decent 1-2 jab combinations going on. And then he would go for the overhands when he knew that he saw the opening for Steve Ercik to let his hands down. But on the other hand, it's like Steve Ercik is a much better, I would say, defensive grappler. I would say he's a much better overall boxer against the rest of the division. It's just that stylistically, Kai France saw openings that others didn't, that he could capitalize on, especially with his power and his huge overhands. And so Kai France stylistically is a really good matchup against a Steve Ercik. However, against Alejandro Pantoja, I was rewatching their fights. Yes, I felt like it should have been a draw in their first fight on the Ultimate Fighter. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Alejandro Pantoja was landing a lot of body kicks. They were all landing. And I rewatched also the Brandon Moreno versus Kai France interim title fight. And the body kick, I understand that it was a switch body kick after a combination from Brandon Moreno. He sneaks it in way better. I understand that, but Brandon Moreno finished Kai France with a body kick. So I'm actually going to say that maybe like Alejandro Pantoja has some of the best body kicks. He doesn't set them up as well, granted, but he does have some of the best body kicks in the division. And so I'm going to say that he probably hurts Kai France in numerous occasions with the body kicks. And then at one sequence, he kind of falls to the ground Kai France for a second. And that's just enough for Alejandro Pantoja to hop on the back. Maybe Kai France turtles a little bit, and he gives up the body triangle. And then Alejandro Pantoja, he just kind of rides out Kai France for the round until Kai France gives him an opening in like 1 minute left in the round. I'm going to say second round submission for Alejandro Pantoja against Kai France. And then we have Ilia Taptoro, versus Charles Oliveira. I'm going to say that Ilia Topuria, he basically lands a few overhands. That's kind of what he does. He waits for the openings. He's really defensively responsible until he gets going with these combinations. Then these people kind of can find openings in his defense. They could find chinks in his armor. The thing is, against a guy like Jai Herbert, is he was fighting a guy who was way taller, who was way longer than a Charles Oliveira. Now, granted, he's not nearly as good, but Charles Oliveira, he has really good in-tight knees, and he has really good grappling. And we know that this is going to be a harder fight than what most people are predicting, than what the odds are suggesting, than what the Tapology fans are picking. We know that this is going to be a harder fight for Ilia, and for sure it is, but honestly, looking at the weigh-ins, he doesn't look that much smaller at all. People were saying he's going to tower over Ilia because, he actually looks like 5'6" in certain like comparisons against Alexander Volkanovski, who's really 5'5", people are saying, and Volkanovski said himself. But Ilia Topuria looked like he was a real like 5'7", 5'8" even in comparison to Charles Oliveira. He just looked like a forehead lower in height, really. And Ilia Topuria is going to be able to find the openings against the taller guy. He's done that before. It's just that he is going to have a little more struggles here because Charles Oliveira likes to pressure forward, and these other guys that he's fought don't like to pressure forward that much. We know, plenty of people have breaked this fight down to a T. We know what's going to happen here. Charles Oliveira is going to have to try and go for the takedowns. He's going to have to try and mix in the striking with the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu, because he's going to have to prove why the lightweights are a different breed, why they're actually more physically imposing here. He's going to have to prove a lot of things here as the lightweight guy who is fighting for the title here. And overall, I think that it's going to be a interesting fight up until the KO. And so I'm going to go with Charles Oliveira. No, I'm actually going to go with Ilia Topuria here, because I think that overall Ilia Topuria is going to land these overhands, and he's going to set them up with the jabs to the body. We saw in his open workouts these the jabs to the body against Guram Kutladze that he was working with his training partner for. He was setting up the body kicks. I mean, not the body kicks, the jabs, when a guy like Charles Oliveira would go for the body kicks. Or Guram, imitating Charles Oliveira in the open workouts. He was going with the body kicks, the teep kicks, and the flying knees, and so Ilia Topuria would kind of counter with the body jabs and the overhands after. Guram, imitating Charles Oliveira, would go for those techniques, and so I think that he was perfectly imitating Charles Oliveira in those sequences. And with that being said, I think that overall Charles Oliveira might get a takedown in the first round, and it's going to be really, really interesting to see how Ilia Topuria adjusts to that. But I think that he's gonna get up and he's gonna down block on most of the takedowns. He's gonna push the head down. He's gonna you know like he's gonna loosen the grip with if it gets to the fence. I think that he's gonna try to also if he's at an advantageous position, he's probably going to go for those judo throws that he likes to go for. I wouldn't be surprised by that because he has been talking like he's going to try and submit Charles Oliveira as well if he gets there. And so I think it's going to be interesting how the grappling sequences go. But I think he's going to down block on the head. He's going to, like against Bryce Mitchell, he did numerous occasions. And I think that he's going to try to loosen the grip in certain exchanges. And if it gets to the cage, he's going to try for some judo throws. And in the second round, I think he's going to know what Charles Oliveira is doing now because he likes to download the data similar to a Piotr Jan. He likes to figure out his opponents, and then he likes to go for the KO blows. And so I'm going to say that he kind of does a few more jabs to the body. Maybe he does a little more combos. He likes to go, maybe he'll do like a hook to the body, overhand upstairs. I think it's going to be a second round KO for Ilia Topuria. And it's going to be a pretty vicious one. I think it's going to be similar to Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. I think it's going to be like Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. That's going to be pretty vicious. So with that being said, those are my UFC 317 Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria full card predictions. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Mask of MMA out.